Okay, this is the Water Eclipse HPCS. It's a standard airbrush. If yours isn't identical, it's going to be similar to it. I've got the paint cap off, the front cap, and the rear cap. I don't use those. And again, this is the important chuck for the needle. You just loosen that up just a little bit. You only need to loosen it just a bit, and that needle will slide in and out just fine. For setting the needle, tightening it down, or for removing the needle for cleaning, or again for setting the airbrush down without endangering the needle, you loosen that chuck, pull the needle back a little ways, tighten it down, and then your needle isn't exposed where it will be damaged if you drop the airbrush, if it falls off a table or something. It's a handy little thing to do. So you have the nozzle. Let's show you that. And again, before you set the needle, however, you want to make sure you've tightened down the nozzle and the nozzle cap. Simple as all that. That's all that is. And in that nozzle where the needle comes together in there is where your residue builds up. Let's show you that real quick here. So close up, as close as we can get it, the needle goes up into there, and you can just barely see it maybe, but it comes through the end here, and that's the all-important fitting right there, and that's where your paint is going to build up, just inside of there, down in there, and that's what you're cleaning mostly. But you clean this whole area, and you keep that clean while you're using it, and you won't have any problems. So let me show you this, a couple other things then. Then with the nozzle and nozzle cap off, if you have the needle in there, you see that the needle will stick out up here. And so if you had the nozzle off of there, and you wanted to be safe, you would at least have the needle withdrawn even further, so it's down in the casing shaft of the airbrush. And another thing you want to know is this: if you remove this needle all the way, pull it out like we do to clean it, what can happen, or will happen if you want it to, a couple things, is this chuck will easily come off of here, fall off, and get lost. So you might want to make sure it's tight, or make sure you remove it and put it somewhere where you can't lose it. The other thing that happens is that the only thing holding this trigger in is the needle. The needle goes through this shaft, through a hole in the base of this trigger, which we'll show you now, and you might remove it to clean it, or it might fall out on accident when you're cleaning, and here's what will happen. There's the trigger. Take a good look, and what you're going to see is there's a hole there that goes through the trigger, and that's where the needle passes through. So when you put the trigger back in, you have to make sure you orient that hole that way rather than have the trigger sideways. So if you look at it from the side, if you got that hole there, it's wrong. You got to have it like this. The trigger hole, it's got to be going front to back. To get the trigger back in there then, you can do that two ways, either with the core recoil mechanism in here by pulling back and holding that with one finger and then precariously lowering the trigger down into its hole this way, or you can remove, and that's difficult to do because it's difficult to get the trigger into the hole. We'll show you here in a second. We'll go ahead and remove the recoil core, whatever you want to call that, and that just unscrews. And be careful, it's an easy time for that chuck to unscrew while you're unscrewing this. And there you have the innards here. There's three parts here to this, and there's a spring in there and so forth. If you have the chuck off of here, it'll come apart, and that's okay. There's nothing difficult here. There's a spring and the front shaft there, and then that recovery area back there, the backing area. Let's go ahead and put that back together so we can see this. You might need to clean that. The other thing you want to notice is that this is how this tab goes. This little tab goes to the top, and it comes through there like that. So when you're putting this back in here, A lot of times you want to just feed it carefully. A lot of times I'll just hold the base of it in like that and fish it in there, and then it comes up just where it needs to. That's where you want it to be, where you need it to be. Now again, as you look in there, you might not see the hole where the trigger goes, and I'll show you why not. It's very difficult to see. There it is, and you have to get light going directly down in there to see it. It's a very difficult alignment process, but you just line up your trigger and get it down in there. I'll try to do that without having the proper light. And again, make sure that you have the trigger aligned properly with the direction of the airbrush. And again, it's very difficult to do without the without being able to see down in there, but you get a feel for it after a while, and you can do it without seeing, which I've done here. And then again, to reassemble it, make sure you have this tab pointed up and hold it in there like that so it doesn't catch. It has very little clearance in there. And screw your core back in there and get that tight. And then replace the nozzle and the nozzle cap, and screw that on there real good and tight before setting the needle in. And again, that trigger can still come out of there even right now until that needle goes through there. The trigger can just fall out. So then you have to loosen your needle shock, feed the needle in there. Again, make sure that's tight. Then set the needle, seat it, and shock it tight, and you're good to go.